Okay, so just to check things out here really quick, if you can hear my voice and you see the bright orange PowerPoint slide, go ahead and raise your hand using the Zoom interface. Okay, we've got people seeing me. As we go through today, if you have any questions or comments, please go ahead and send those to me using the Q&A box. So that'll pop up and let me see any questions or comments you're sending in. So even if it's not a question, send it in that way. So today is an encore presentation of our webinar from about a month ago where we launched our WAX650S access point. So I'm going to go through that today for any of you that missed it or those of you who just want a refresher on it. So the main idea, the thing behind Wi-Fi 6 is to make it basically handle more bandwidth, more congestion, more users in the same area. So we'll get to that a little bit here later, but I'll go ahead and talk a little bit about the WAX650S, the hardware specs on it. So it's Wi-Fi 6, aka 802.11ax. They're the same thing. And unlike 11AC, 11AX applies to both the 5 gigahertz and the 2.4 gigahertz radio. 11AC only made improvements to the 5 gigahertz radio performance. So this guy here is a 4x4, meaning you can transmit 4 spatial streams and receive 4 spatial streams simultaneously on both the 5 gigahertz and the 2.4 gigahertz radio. It has our smart antenna technology in there that you're probably familiar with from some of our other access points. We will talk a little bit about that later. It's got a 5 gig uplink port to support the increased bandwidth these Wi-Fi 6 APs are able to provide. And this is a NebulaFlex Pro product, so it's standalone or can be managed in the cloud. You can see here there's one LED on the outside of it that can change colors to indicate different things for you. On the underside, you've got that 5 gig uplink port. You've also got a pass-through 1 gig LAN, so you can run Ethernet to that 5 gig uplink port and then run another Ethernet connection back out to another device. It can be powered via AC power as well as PoE. When it comes to PoE, this does require 802.3 BT, so-called PoE++, I think is what people are calling it now. It requires a little over 30 watts of power for full performance. So if you need that, we've got a couple switches that can provide that for you today. We'll have more coming in the future. You can also buy for $15 a AC adapter if you'd like to power it that way. Or you can plug it in on a traditional 802.3 AT PoE injector or switch. It will still work. You just won't get maximum performance out of it. We had one of our customers who had tested this and absolutely was loving the performance on this. And then we checked and said, well, wait a minute, how are you powering it? You decided not to take the BT switch that we suggested you needed for it. And so it turned out all of their testing had been done at on standard 802.3 AT power with performance degraded. They still love the performance on this guy. So here we've got a breakdown of the hardware itself. You've probably seen similar slides if you've been through some of our other wireless presentations. That's interesting. My touch screen has stopped working. Okay. Just want to highlight a couple things here for you. It's similar design to our other APs. You'll notice right here this metal plate in the back of the housing and another large metal plate on top. So unlike most of our competition, what we do is we put these heat spreaders or heat shields on there. They help reduce EMI, but more importantly, they help draw heat off the components on the PCBA to help vent them out. So what that does is that gives us increased life on the product itself. So the components won't fail over time. Basically helps solve the heat fatigue issues. You'll see a lot of shielding on the individual components on the PCBA, not just the wireless chips. Again, that's just to help us a little bit with EMI and get us just that much better performance. You'll also see over here, we've continued our strategy of moving the antennas off the PCBA. Most of our competition, including some of our more expensive competition, still continues to mount the antennas directly onto the PCBA. So by lifting them off the PCBA, you're getting some separation from the board and you reduce your EMI issues. So you get a little bit better performance. We've beefed up here surge and electric static discharge protection. We've got Bluetooth low energy built into the device itself. And then we've also got a third radio. So we've got one radio for 5 gigahertz, one radio for 2.4, and another radio specifically for doing channel scanning and monitoring for performance. So we can be more aggressive as far as scanning the environment and reacting to it without having to take away from airtime from one of the radios that's providing coverage for your users. So this guy here adds a new mounting bracket that's different than what you've got. So as you guys probably know, we have a round bracket on most of our APs. The WAX650S series has sort of a square bracket. So this is adding another bracket that we're using. It's designed so you can use this bracket on the ceiling, use it on the wall. It can be designed to connect to a junction box directly. It can be mounted onto a wall outlet box, or through some separate, very cheap clips that we can sell you. It can connect directly to the T-bars that hold up your drop ceiling. So you can mount it there without having to damage the acoustic tiles that you have on the ceiling. So I want to talk a little bit about some of the improvements from Wi-Fi 6. Like I was mentioning at the beginning here, Wi-Fi 6 is all about performance. So a lot of the issues people run into out in the real world, you know, you've got a lot of users, you add and you start having performance issues, so you add another access point, and it really doesn't help. You know, in a classroom situation, having one AP in each classroom, you're still dealing with slow speeds. You know, you upgraded maybe from 11N to 11AC, and you're still not seeing performance improvements that you thought you were going to see. You know, if you do a lot of video chat or conference calls, you run into issues where, you know, you expect the audio to drop out or the video to drop out as you go through. So why is that? So we go into this a lot more in depth in my Wireless 101 presentations, but I'll cover it here briefly. And the main thing here has to do with something called co-channel interference. So when we're dealing with Wi-Fi, we're using radio technology, and basically each device has to take turns broadcasting. If 2 or more devices try to broadcast or send data at the same time, that causes a situation where you get a conflict and the packets end up being dropped. Basically, it's like using a walkie-talkie. If you've ever used the old analog walkie-talkies and you and one of your friends try to talk at the same time, you got a horrible amount of interference. So it's the same thing with Wi-Fi. So back when they developed Wi-Fi back in the 90s, you know, in the original Wi-Fi, we had nowhere near the number of users. No one expected anywhere near the bandwidth that we have today. And unfortunately, Wi-Fi has been held back by that original standard. So Wi-Fi 6 is really the first time in all of these years that the industry has decided to address some of those core issues in the way Wi-Fi works. So just to try to show how important this is, a traditional 802.11b or G connection uses 20 megahertz of bandwidth. The 2.4 gigahertz spectrum in the US is just a little over 60 megahertz in size. So that only gives you 3 channels that you could use at a time before you have interference. So even though you might see 11 channels that you can choose from, most of those are overlapping with other channels. So you very quickly run into a situation where you have interference from your neighbors, from other wireless devices in your house, Bluetooth, cordless phones, things like that that might be using the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. On top of that, generally the way you get to the faster speeds that you see advertised on access points, one of the main ways they go about achieving this is increasing the amount of bandwidth you're using. So for instance, you can go up to 40 megahertz channels in the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. But again, you've only got 60 available for all of yours and all of your neighbors' wireless devices to use in the 2.4 channel at a time. 5 gigahertz makes it a lot better for us, especially if you're talking about 20 megahertz channels. But again, to get those fast speeds you see advertised, you have to go up on most modern APs up to an 80 megahertz channel. And so you again are running into a situation where you've got very few channels available that everybody has to share. So basically, Wi-Fi 6 tries to get around this with some new technologies borrowed from other places, including the cellular world, to try to solve these issues, get rid of the congestion and the problems we've run into. So we'll talk about a few of these in a little bit more in depth. So one of the technologies you have is something called multi-user MIMO. 11AC Wave 2 introduced it DL MIMO, which allowed your access point to send data to maybe 2 or 3 slow devices simultaneously. So Wi-Fi 6 adds the ability for the client devices to all send data simultaneously by using smaller channels. We have something called OFDMA. Previously, Wi-Fi was something called OFDM, which allows us to reuse spectrum and ways to use your airtime much more efficiently. We've broken down resource units into smaller scheduling units. We've increased the encoding to cram more data onto the frequency at the same amount of time, going from 256 QAM in 11AC up to 1024. Something called BSS coloring, and TWT, target wake up time. So all of these different technologies are designed to make it easier to have more devices simultaneously using the same amount of spectrum. So with traditional 802.11a and AC, you've got these dedicated channels that you can use. By going up to OFDMA, and everybody gets the same size channel. With OFDMA, you can, on the fly, dynamically adjust the size of the allocated spectrum for each user to more optimize it to use it. So somebody who's doing VoIP doesn't need a lot of bandwidth, whereas somebody who's streaming 4K video needs a lot of bandwidth. So you can then, OFDMA allows us to allocate the spectrum and the amount of bandwidth for each user. Basically keeping one user from hogging it all up who doesn't necessarily need it. We have something here what we call spatial reuse. So as we get out there, we find, your neighbor might be using the same channel or an overlapping channel to the one you're using, or additional APs spread throughout the office. So with BSS coloring, we have the ability to add some extra data onto the packets as they're being broadcast that identifies who it is that they are trying to, which devices are trying to communicate with each other. So when you get interference coming in from a nearby access point on the same channel, your device has the intelligence to go, wait a minute, it's on the same frequency I'm using, there's a bit of delay, and the technology is able to go, wait a minute, that information isn't meant for me. I can ignore that, and I can put more resources on listening to the transmissions coming in that are supposed to be something I should be listening to. And then in the case of the WAX650S, we've combined all of these technologies with our smart antenna technology. And so basically smart antenna technology allows us to get some of the same spatial reuse benefits for non-Wi-Fi 6 clients, and helps provide a little extra boost to the default BSS coloring that's allowed on there with Wi-Fi 6 clients. So to give you sort of a breakdown using Wi-Fi 6 comparing to 11AC, we have a situation here where we've got 2x2 clients. So as we add clients across the bottom here, this is showing us our aggregated bandwidth that's available. So if you combine all the clients together, what speeds are you getting? So you can see with Wi-Fi 6, basically your bandwidth stays flat, where the 11AC, as you add clients, your aggregated bandwidth actually goes down. So why is that? Now, it comes down to how inefficiently the original Wi-Fi standards managed who gets a chance to broadcast. So you end up in a situation where there are gaps where people should be broadcasting and no one is. And you end up in situations where 2 or more devices decide to broadcast at the same time, causing packets to be dropped, and therefore you lose data and the overall speed goes down. So this is just showing here on the other side, this is that same information but provided on a per client basis. So you see, as you add more clients, obviously you're dividing up how much bandwidth is available for each individual client. And with Wi-Fi 6 in the yellow here, you see each client gets more available bandwidth with the same number of users using the same number of spatial streams. And the improvements get even better here when we're talking 2 APs, because now things like the BSS coloring come in to help enhance spatial channel reuse. So you see the same thing here. The aggregated bandwidth stays pretty flat with Wi-Fi 6, but you start seeing degradation as you add more clients on 11AC. And again, even more pronounced here is the aggregated band, or the individual per client bandwidth is much greater in a Wi-Fi 6 AP than it is in a 11AC AP. So one thing I do want to draw some attention to when it comes to Wi-Fi 6, there are several generations of chipset that are out there that call themselves Wi-Fi 6. Um, and as of today, the Wi-Fi 6 standard still hasn't actually, or excuse me, the 802.11ax standard still hasn't been officially ratified. So a lot of these earlier chips were based on early draft versions of the document that will become Wi-Fi 6. Um, so the Gen 1 chipsets, and there's more than one. There's Gen 1, 1.1, 1.2. And whether we're talking Qualcomm or Broadcom, are missing some of the key features of Wi-Fi 6. So that's something to keep an eye on. So you have products that launched using these Gen 1 chipsets that will never be able to be upgraded to the full feature set that Wi-Fi 6 provides. So this chart here is showing Qualcomm, because Qualcomm is the one I have the access to, but Broadcom is very similar to this. So Qualcomm didn't start shipping their Gen 2 chips until August of this year. Broadcom, I think, was July. So products that actually use those chips probably didn't launch till another month or two after that. So that's something to keep in mind. If this is a product advertising itself as Wi-Fi 6 and it's been around for a while, there's a good chance it's using the Gen 1 chipset, and you're not going to get a lot of those technology benefits that Wi-Fi 6 provides. So that's something to keep in mind. Zyxel, all of our Wi-Fi 6 products, including those that haven't launched yet, are all using Gen 2 chipsets. So all of them will be upgradable to the full Wi-Fi 6 feature set. Another thing I do want to highlight here is some of the features are not currently available, but they will be available as a free firmware update in the future. And that's just us. The bottleneck on that's just waiting for Qualcomm or Broadcom to provide the code that supports all those features. So the hardware should be able to support them. It's just waiting for the code to be implemented. So the WAX650S does include smart antennas, I mentioned before. So I do want to kind of show you how smart antenna works. Basically, we're going to keep it. We have the ability to go through hundreds of different antenna patterns instead of one fixed antenna pattern like on a traditional AP. We can take a look both at where the physical client is in relation to our access point, but also where other sources of interference may be. And on a per client basis, we can choose which client or which antenna pattern to use for that client that optimizes the connectivity. So this is something that works regardless of what the client device is. So with Wi-Fi 6, most of the benefits that you're going to achieve with Wi-Fi 6 require that your client devices also use Wi-Fi 6 and have those same features supported. Smart antenna works regardless of the client device and what technology they are using. Smart antenna also helps us, as we mentioned before, when it comes to multiple APs within interference range of each other by allowing spatial reuse without needing to use BSS coloring and other Wi-Fi 6 technologies. So in general, Wi-Fi 6 is ideal for high density deployments. So classrooms, especially today's modern smart classrooms where every student has a school provided Chromebook or iPad, where they're doing video streaming, where the teacher is screen sharing, those situations, Wi-Fi 6 is really going to shine. Small business offices, it's going to help, especially if you're in a large business building where you've got multiple neighbors all using their own Wi-Fi networks that you don't manage. This helps solve some of those issues there. And then hospitality, specifically conference rooms, expo centers, things like that, where you're going to have a lot of people in one small area. So again, the WAX650S is NebulaFlex Pro. So the AP can be used 3 different ways. It can be used standalone. It can be managed by one of our controllers or security gateways, or it can be managed with the Nebula Control Center Cloud. Because this is NebulaFlex Pro, it includes 1 year of our professional pack. Automatically gets activated when you assign this to the cloud. If you want to learn more about Nebula, we have dedicated Nebula webinars every month that you can go through. You can also go up on YouTube, and those have been recorded, so you can watch the last one on there. And you can switch back and forth anytime between the different modes. However, keep in mind the configuration doesn't stay the same because some of the features change between the different modes. So guys, it was a real quick webinar here for you today. That is it. So if you have any questions, send them in using that Q&A box. Also, I do want to highlight here that we have forum.zyxel.com. This is a user forum for everybody to chat with each other, to get help from each other. But more importantly, our product management and R&D teams do participate on the forum. So it's a great place to go if you have feature suggestions to put them out there, or if you want to have some issues that don't need immediate resolution. This is another alternative to getting help other than calling us or opening a ticket in the Nebula interface. And then my email is down here at the bottom of the screen. So I've got one question here from Gojiko. I think I'm saying that right. Apologies if I am not. WAX650S compatible with this product. So this is WAX650S is an 11 AC access point. It's also Nebula managed. You can absolutely use them at the same location, but if you want to get the Wi-Fi 6 features and functionality, currently the WAX650S is the only product that we have here in North America that supports it. We're supposed to have a few other Wi-Fi 6 APs, but they were pushed back due to issues with COVID-19, the virus situation. So those are coming. We are hoping to launch 2 more Wi-Fi 6 APs, some more affordable Wi-Fi 6 APs in June, and then another batch of Wi-Fi 6 APs in either July or August. So before long, we'll have a complete family of Wi-Fi 6 access points in all different price ranges. Gojika's also asking about outdoor. So right now we do not have anything I can tell you about a Wi-Fi 6 outdoor AP. It will come at some point, but it's not locked down enough yet that I can share any sort of timeline for when that might be available. Gojika's asking here about deploying Wi-Fi in a sports arena. So one way to do it is you can use the Wi-Fi 6 APs and then put them in NEMA enclosures if you want to mount them outdoors. We have a number of partners that have done that with some of our other indoor APs. You know, if you want to go back down to 11 AC, the WAX650S was specifically designed for those types of scenarios. Having smart antenna, but having a much more restricted view, allowing to provide coverage in that. So reach out to your salesperson. They can put you in touch with Marcus, who's our sales engineer, and they can maybe help come out with a help you with planning that out and figuring out how to put that together. So Alex is asking here, what is the PoE switch model needed to work with the WAX650S? There is a GS1350-6HP. So that one supports the new BT standard. And there is one other model, and I cannot remember the model number off the top of my head. There's one more, I believe, that we've got now also that supports it with a higher power budget, so you can support multiple devices. I cannot remember off the top of my head the model. You can email me. My email's there, and I can look that up for you, or you can just reach out to your salesperson, and we can give you the answer there. So Gojiko is, again, apologies if I'm mispronouncing that, is asking how many users can a single AP handle. So this comes down to something that we bring up in our Wi-Fi 101 presentation, and that is the number of users you can support almost always is limited by the Wi-Fi standard itself, not the hardware. And basically, it generally has to do with the users, the protocol, and the way that interference comes up. You might remember the slides I was showing with 11AC, where you know you start seeing bandwidth issues and stuff like that as you add more users. So generally, that's your constraining factor, not the AP itself. Having said that, I believe this AP is doing either 128 or 256 in theory, associated users per radio, I believe. Sorry, I can't remember if it's 128 or 256. Now you're still going to run into those same issues where the protocol is going to be your limiting factor, because most users out there are using AC, or they're using early generation Wi-Fi 6, such as the new iPhones and newer Samsung phones that don't support all the Wi-Fi 6 features. So it's going to be another year or two before the majority of users are going to have Wi-Fi 6. But in the future, as we go forward and more client devices start supporting these Wi-Fi 6 features, it will actually allow you to increase the number of users before you start having issues. Jack is asking here, does Nebula provide load balancing? What happens with roaming? Is it the same as AC? So to answer that question, yes, Nebula does support load balancing. There's a couple different options that we give you for how to do that in the Nebula interface. So we do support that. When it comes to roaming, roaming with Wi-Fi 6 is still using, when it comes to roaming, 802.11 was it KV and R. So those are still the same core technologies with 11AC that are also supported with Wi-Fi 6 when it comes to doing roaming. And then in Nebula itself, there's some other stuff that we can do for clients that don't support those standards, some older clients, to help sort of force them to roam. Anybody that's done a lot of Wi-Fi networks knows iPhones, particularly the older ones, not even that much older, are horrible when it comes to roaming. They like to connect to one AP and then never roam no matter how bad the signal gets. So we've got some stuff we can do in Nebula to help those users and sort of force them to disconnect and reconnect to the better AP as they move around. That is it for questions. I'll hang around here for a few more minutes. As always, my email's there. Let me know if you have any feedback, you have any suggestions for different topics you'd like to see us cover in the future. Go ahead and email me, seanr@zyxel.com. So let's see here. One more question. Is the unit available now? Yes, these are available. These launched at the beginning of February. So all of our distribution has these. So you can reach out to your distributor to get your pricing on them. These should be available at D&H, Ingram Micro, Cinex, and Target. If you reach out to them and they say, hey, we can't find it, reach out to your salesperson at Zyxel or push them to contact their Zyxel rep at their company. This should be there. Every now and then we run into issues with this where the sales guy who's handling your account can't find the product for one reason or another, even though it's there. So they're there, and we also have them in our warehouse, so they can be drop shipped if for some reason your distributor of choice doesn't have any in stock. But you'll need to reach out to them to find out what your pricing is. The model we talked about today is going to be our flagship model, so it's going to be our most expensive Wi-Fi 6 model, at least in the near future. So again, we have more affordable options coming in June, and even more options coming in probably July and August. So soon we'll have just about every form factor and market position covered with Wi-Fi 6 APs. Again, it was, most of those were supposed to be here already, but unfortunately with the COVID situation, it's made some of the components we need hard to get. It also shut down the labs that do the certification for us. So we had to wait for those to reopen up, but they are coming. If you're in Europe, some of them are available now. Since they don't have to worry about FCC testing, their labs didn't shut down. Hi, Jack. Jack is asking, is there a document referred to preferred methods of setting up iPhone, Apple Wi-Fi networks in Nebula, as you mentioned? Maybe. That would be something that if we don't have it, we could put something together for you. That would be done probably by our sales engineer, Marcus. So you can reach out to your salesperson. There may be something like that support has already put together and published on our support website. I don't know that answer off the top of my head, but if there's not, that's something we could absolutely put together for you. Just, reach out to Jacob, Ivan, or Try, whoever your sales rep is, and they can help work that out with Marcus. Yeah, and for a lot of requests right now, try to send them, you know, work them through in general your salesperson. Um, because everybody's working from home, it's not as easy to coordinate things as it was when we were all sitting in the office. So work out with your salesperson, let them know what you need, who you need to talk to, and they'll go ahead and put together, you know, getting setting a time for Marcus or me or whoever to get on the phone to help you guys with anything you've got. Douglas was asking about archive. So this will be posted to our Zyxel America channel YouTube page, probably within the next 24 to 36 hours. We also did a similar presentation. This is an Encore, so last month in March. So that one should be recorded and viewable today. And I'm going to go ahead and end this, guys. I don't see any more questions. If you were working on another question, just highlight it real quick, copy it, and then just paste it into an email to me, and I'll just get back to you via email. Feel free to email me directly with any questions when it comes to our wireless products or Nebula. I'm happy to help, although try to CC your sales guy also so they know what's going on. Thanks, guys.